Hey, so in this sideshow episode, as it were, we're going to explore setting up the AI to act as a completely independent developer and tester, where what they can both see is the spec, but they can't see each other's implementation. So the tester, importantly, can't see the code that we've written. In theory, it's then just writing to the spec, which is a powerful technique. You know, if you're a developer, no matter which way around you go, test first or code first, in your head you kind of thinking about the code and how you're going to structure it, and you're making lots of assumptions, and it gets very muddy. We don't operate with perfect firewalls, and if you're writing, we just don't operate with perfect firewalls, but we can set up a pretty good firewall with AI, which is really interesting. So here I've got a specification for a really simple 8-bit CPU. It's got a couple of registers, a program counter, a zero flag. A zero flag will be set to 1 if an operation results in a 0. So load of value 0, set to 1. Set load of value set to 6, set to 0. And a halt flag for when to indicate we're going to stop, basically. We've got a tiny amount of memory. It's just 8-bit unsigned bytes, basically, for arithmetic. Really simple, few opcodes. Each execution of a CPU pulls an opcode, reads the memory, whatever it needs to do, executes it. Really simple. Just a handful of opcodes. There's not many opcodes. And then I've written at the bottom external interface for test harness. That's actually, I should rename that. This is now actually my implementation plan. So I want it to define an interface called iCPU. I want to place it in a file of its own. It's got a really basic interface. It shouldn't have a constructor there, my bad. It's got a step, a run, and properties still as inspect the flags and the registers and the program counter, so we can actually undertake assertions in our tests. And then in another file we've got our CPU implementation, and it contains a constructor that allows us to create a CPU with some memory. And we're separating these things out deliberately so that we can really lock the AI onto doing just what we want, to look at just the bits we want, so it can't go looking at the code. I've created a basic, I got Claude to create me a really basic TypeScript setup here, so we're pretty much good to go. I will have Claude running. I just checked it was installed. So I'm using Claude Code. Again, it's still my favourite coding assistant by a good way at the moment. I really enjoy working with it. And I'm just going to say to it, read and implement the specification. And it shouldn't take it too long, but I'm going to try and keep this episode under 15 minutes. So I may well cut out some of its thinking. If you want to see its thinking and me talking about it, watch one of the longer episodes. Okay, that's implemented. Allegedly. Not going to dwell on it too much, but let's check we've got something basically sensible looking. We have something basically sensible looking. We've got our CPU class, it implements iCPU, it's got a constructor, a step method, fine, really basic, and a run method. Okay, fine. It's pretty simple, and I'm not going to go into detail. That's really not the point of this exercise. We should have an iCPU interface, iCPU, great. I'm kind of wishing I'd say make these read-only, but it doesn't really matter. Again, not the point of this. But now we've got a CPU, and I'm just going to remind myself what script it's done. I should be able to just npm build it. Okay, I'm going to quit this because I don't want it to have any memory of what it's just done. So when we quit Claude, we're essentially cleaning out that context window. I don't want it to be able to remember what it did when it wrote the CPU, so I've shut it down. I'm just going to check it does build. It looks like it builds, but let's just check. Okay, it looks like it's built. How very exciting. We've got a disk folder with some stuff in it, which we're never really going to really run except through tests. So we've built a CPU. It possibly works. So then I've got another spec, which is CPU test instructions, and this is essentially what I want it to do to test the CPU. I made a couple of changes to this, as you saw. So assume test API. Can interact with the CPU, which can be found in source/i cpu.ts. Okay, fine. We want it to interact through just that interface. It's got some information about assertions, fine. It's really basic. However, the important thing is the constraints. We're telling it to use the spec of a single source of truth, to only write tests against the iCPU interface, to not read the CPU implementation source, to derive the expectations from the spec. Yeah, fine. And then finally, I've asked it to implement a factory method called create CPU that will return a valid iCPU. However, I don't want it to actually instantiate a CPU. I'm going to wire that up. Again, I'm doing my best to create a real hard firewall between the CPU implementation and the test implementation. So now we're going to go back into here and we're going to run Claude again. I spend half my life in Claude these days, but I get an awful lot done, so there you go. Yeah, so now I'll ask it to essentially implement the tests. Read and implement this test specification. And we'll see what happens. Okay, I am going to watch this time more carefully because it will ask me if it can read things and do things, and I want to see what it actually reads and does. I want to make sure it does not read the CPU. It's read the iCPU, it's not read the CPU. It's looking for specs, okay. It's reading the CPU.md spec. That's good. It's looking for TypeScript files. This is where we've got some risk it picks up the CPU. If it's not read the CPU, it's just seen the files. Okay, that's good. And again, I think this is a really powerful technique. You can use this on big things, small things, particularly if you're taking this kind of spec first approach to development. And again, that's why I think spec first development is so powerful, particularly for breaking things down into these small units that you have to implement. I do have some concerns, which we can talk about in another video, about consistency between specs as systems get large. That can be a real challenge, but I think that's a topic for another video. Let's see what this does. Hopefully it'll give me some tests for run. I did not run this in advance. This is all completely live and at the end of a long day of work. And it was a long day of work. So we'll see what happens. Okay, creating a factory function. That's good. And obviously these tests are going to fail because I've asked it to raise an exception in the factory function. So it really should fail. Okay, so it's looking to create the TypeScript file the test's in. Let's let that happen. At no point, I'll have cut a bit out there while it thought for a while, but at no point did it read cpu.ts. It's done what we asked. It stayed away from it, and it's read the files we've asked it to read. So this should be interesting. It's still writing a file that looks at. Okay, great. We've got a test file. Let's have a look at it. Or should I give them out lowercase? That's really irritating me now. Okay, create CPU. Must be able to buy the actual CPU implementation. So if I run this, let's just go to, it's a bit bigger for people. I just want another window for this. I'm not going to close down the test implementation, because if we find problems with the tests, I will start asking Claude to fix them. So I wanted to keep its context as to what it's done. So let's go to the folder and let's run our test. Okay, so they're all failing quite rightly, as we expect, because we've got no implementation. That's what we want to see. And it's not imported the file, so also what we wanted to see. So we are going to return a new CPU with the memory. Okay, so we provided the factory. So at this point, we know it's not looked in cpu.ts. We would have seen it in the Claude console. We've told it not to. It's been unable to wire it up. The tests fail. We've essentially got a developer and a tester, and going back to vtest, however you say it, the tests pass, and that's great. But that's happened. The power of this, I think, is just to be really clear about. That's happened all from the spec with no hidden knowledge. We've been able to essentially have a separate tester and a separate developer interact with only the interface, the contract, and the specification in common. And out of that, we've got a test suite, which we're not going to spend ages going through, because that's really not the point of this video. But out of that, we've got a test suite that is grounded on the spec and only the spec. And I think that's a super powerful technique. You know, as I said at the start of this video, it can be a real challenge, you know, keeping these things separate. And yes, people talk about TDD, and that can help. Although, I mean, I've always struggled with TDD. I tend to, I guess because I've coded since I was tiny, I started coding when I was like 6 or something. I tend to think in code, so I get ahead of myself, which is good and bad. Right? There's good and bad to that. But when I'm writing TDD, I'm also writing the code in my head, so I'm like, it just doesn't really work for me. Sometimes it does. If I've got like a CPU thing, this would work nicely for me to do as TDD, and get that tick off a test. But some stuff I just find very difficult. I'm rambling now. Point being, we've got a separate developer and tester here, and we've been able to organise them and get this piece of work done probably inside 15 minutes, with a degree of independence, so we can be sure that things are implemented as per our spec and not relying on our assumptions. So I hope that's interesting. I think in the future, sort of sideshow, we'll talk about some of the perils of spec-driven development, because there's some really interesting challenges there, I think, which I think lots of us will be, not just, I don't mean like lots of us hallowed people, you know, I'm just Joe Blog developer, you know, but lots of people in the industry will be thinking about hard in the next few years. In any case, hope you enjoyed that. This doesn't interrupt the regular schedule of console stuff. I just thought it would be an interesting sort of sideshow, as it were. So yeah, see you in the next full episode.